Okay, so let's talk about an area where we disagree, and that is on the veracity of the New Testament versus the Old Testament. So let's start with some kind of the broader philosophical framework. What do you think that Christianity adds to the world that Judaism didn't in the first place?
First of all, I want you to know how proud I am to have friends like you and Dennis Prager, Michael Medved. I'll be back with Dennis again. I think I remember Dennis's comment when we were talking on this. He was brilliant what he said. He said, when Messiah comes, I will just have one question. Have you been here before? And I think that is what it'll really boil down to. I don't like to say the word add because it seems like it is something superimposed that wasn't there. I think it was already there, Ben. Of course, my own upbringing was so different. It was my ancestors were Orthodox Hindu priests generations ago, from the highest caste to the Hindu priesthood. I think it is that one verse, one line, that the moral law hangs upon, I am the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of Egypt. That redemption motif, I think it moved beyond the metaphor from Egypt, although it was real. It moved beyond the blood sacrifices, and it moved to the very person of the Son of Man that Daniel talked about, and the perfection of the law, which was not violated, but affirmed and endorsed. So what I see in the person of Jesus Christ are two very real things, Ben. Number one, it is the fact that he embodied that which was the purest, that was called for by this very rigorous 613 system of laws that were given. And if you move down even to Habakkuk, which is then quoted 3 times in the New Testament, from 613, David reduced it to a handful. Isaiah reduced it even more. Micah brought it down to 3, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before your God. But the Habakkuk phrase of the just shall live by faith, which I understand is more correctly represented as by his faithfulness, that when you move into the person of Christ, 2 things happen. The law is honored and not debunked, but the relationship question, when you give the 4 propositions in your closing chapter, starting all the way from purpose and then in relationship. The most moving moment in your book is when you talk to your daughter. Okay, I loved it. I'm a grandfather of 5. And my grandson Jude, brilliant guy. He uses words like hypothesis and all of that. He's turning 8 tomorrow, okay? When my daughter Naomi lost her car keys, she stopped going crazy in the house, slapped her forehead and said, I must be losing my mind. Little Jude, who was 5.5 then, stood in front of her and he said, Mommy, whatever you do, please don't ever lose your heart because I'm in there. That personal relationship, as much as I value and love the law, I need to go beyond that relationships. And so here's what I say. The most beautiful moment in the New Testament to me, if I were to choose one moment or 2, first I would want to listen to Jesus' talk on Emmaus Road, because he connects all the dots going back to the beginning. Brilliant history lesson. You would love it, I think, as he talked on the Emmaus Road. But the second moment was when he's on the Mount of Transfiguration. Who does he bring with him? Moses and Elijah, 2 of the most thundering prophets for whom he was the undertaker. Okay, we don't know exactly what Moses was buried in. Elijah goes up on chariots of fire. But then he goes to the cross. I know I can't pay for myself. The redemptive factor of the purest paying for the impure. Not that there was no penalty, but he paid it and then rises again from the dead. To me, it's a composite that doesn't violate what preceded. I think it completes it. And to me, the attractiveness, and I really appreciate you even giving me the opportunity to share it. Let me give you an illustration of this. I was in Jerusalem some years ago. You may know the name of Moshe Sharon, the well-known scholar on Islamics in Israel. Okay, I was writing a book on an imaginary conversation between Jesus and Muhammad. it'll be released posthumously. So I've got it written, okay? So I'll tell you what he said to me. Great man. He's probably written more on in scripture in stone than any other human being around there. He looked at me and he said, Mr. Zacarías, you're a very clever man. He said, well, I'll tell you something you don't know. I said, there's a lot I don't know, sir. He said, no, let me tell you something. He said, you don't know about me. He said, I'm now a professor. He said, but I used to work for the Mossad. He said, Mr. Zacarías, you're a Christian. I'm a Jewish man. But we both have one thing in common. I said, what's that? He said, communion with God. I said, you're right. My goal in life is to have communion with God. He said, so is mine. He said, but I picked up extremists who would go and blow themselves up. And what people don't know, he said, they would have a leaden girdle around that midsection so that they could protect what they felt they were going to use in paradise finally. He said, that's a different worldview. That's a different worldview. He said, you and I can talk because we have the same goal, communion with God. But if a person thinks of an erotic and a sensually driven eternity, I'm not on the same page with that person. We have completely different goals. So I say, to me in Christ, I see the completion of the story because I hunger not just for propositional truth. When Jesus comes down from the mountain and Peter goes, what does he say? But now we have the word of the prophets made most certain, and you would do well to pay heed to it as a light in a dark place. So I think it is a completion, and my friend Prager was absolutely right. When the Lord returns, I'll say, truly, have you been here before? But my goal would be to get there before he returns. I'm 73 now, but that's my answer to you.